We're live. Another episode 95 with David Poznic and Joseph. Back again. Well, welcome, David. Much pleasure to have you. I'm very excited for this this episode. David, so for those who don't know David, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's Bollywood, which is a whole like cinema like on its own. And then there's Aamir Khan, which is the king of Bollywood. A lot of people can say. And there's David, who did like, you know, like we like in movies, like you see Batman, and Batman does like awesome body transformations. Well, David did those body transformations to Aamir Khan, as a physical trainer, right? Is that about right? Can you tell us?
Yeah, that's
more
precisely
about
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I come from a performing arts background primarily, with a heavy movement on focus on movement. So I grew up doing musical theater and then got into opera and physical theater, and then I became a circus artist. So I got into acrobatics, juggling, unicycling, making masks, and then I was actually in India, in Mumbai back in 2011, doing I was directing India's first ever hip hop Bollywood circus. Got a crazy project. They were like, "Hey, we want to do something really fresh." So they flew me in I was living in LA at the time. They flew me in for a few weeks, and that one, was sponsored by MTV India. It was this big crazy project, and we're like, get rid of the elephants, get rid of the clowns. Let's bring in some b-boys, and his manager ended up finding me through that show because he was going to be playing a circus artist in his next film, this famous movie star Aamir, and he was he's kind of an out of shape 47-year-old actor who needed to look like an acrobat essentially. And so they ended up offering me this job to give him both personal training to a physical transformation, but also to turn him into an acrobat. So I taught him juggling and unicycling and handstands and the sear wheel, and we worked together for 2 years on 2 of his films and did this massive transformation to get him looking good for both movies, and it worked. It was a huge success. It was really exciting process with great results, and so I ended up getting to live in India and tour around the country with him for 2 years.
Wow. And the 2 movies they're Doom 3 and PK.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. PK is one of my favorite movies. I love that movie.
That's good. It's amazing.
But let's circle back to
Sure.
You were in LA.
Yeah.
Why were you flown out to India to direct a hip hop Bollywood circus act?
Yeah, that's fair. So this is actually it was kind of just a crazy coincidence where 4 of my friends who largely knew each other through me were all in India at the same time. A couple of them were working for the circus. Then one of my best friends was doing a bunch of Bollywood business stuff over there for a few years. So all these friends of mine got together in India and they were hanging out, and I get this call and they're like, how can we be here without you? Like, we know each other because of you. Mm-hmm. And they ended up actually approaching the circus that my friends were working for, and they said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did something that was really fresh and modern with this circus? We have this guy in LA who we should bring out to do like a special project. And so they basically convinced the director of one of the biggest circuses in India to give a 2,000 seat tent and 70 acrobats, and we had kind of a one-night deal. So it's like, okay, you can borrow the entire circus, and you have a few weeks to prepare it. And so we ended up basically they ended up flying me out there for 3 weeks, and we got MTV India to sponsor it. So we had a bit of budget. We brought in b-boys and MCs, and we had popping battle and bringing in Bollywood dance troupe to replace the kind. India has very traditional circus culture, so it's like here in America and in Europe, circus is now really hip again. People are like, oh, cool, circus. And in India, it's definitely like, oh, circus, like that's for kids and grandmas. Like it's still very old fashioned. So they were kind of trying to rejuvenate the circus and find a way to attract a younger crowd to kind of catch up to the West in a way, like show that circus can be cool and hip. And so they brought me out for this project, and it was this whirlwind storm, just a couple of weeks to put together an entire, hour and a half long show. But it was really fun. It was a amazing experience, and then that led to this next chapter.
Wow. So wait, were you working with animals and stuff, or is it just?
No, they had elephants in the show, and I was like, no, we're not doing. I don't do animal. I mean, there are. I should say, I have seen occasionally circuses, like there's a great, touring circus in Chicago that has a guy who's rescued pit bulls who are going to be, put under because they had hurt people, and he rehabilitates them and trains them and then does shows for children to teach them that animals. So I don't want to make a blanket statement that it's always horrible to work with animals. There are some people doing good work, really helping animals in situations like that. But I'm definitely not supportive of having animals for performance in circuses. They're generally not treated very well. They don't have the space they should have. It's not a very humane practice, which is why most circuses in the States now, in Europe don't do that. So no, we actually had a big, I went to the director of the owner of the circus one day, and, I said, hey, so, this project we're doing, I just want to let you know, like, we're not going to do the elephants. And he's like, you have to use the elephants. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, we're not. And he's like, but the people will riot if there are no elephants. And I was like, look, you brought me here because you want to do something new. Like, you brought me here because, so let's do this. And, so it's kind of a process of really convincing them to move into really new territory for them, and kind of, got rid of the very traditional clowns, the elephants.
And you were the circus director? Like, is that the guy who sang The Greatest Showman, who's like, hey, and now we see the elephants?
So that's not you. No, so that's the MC.
Okay.
So I was actually directing like a theater director or a film director would do. So I was essentially we were working with a couple of our other friends who were there also in the show at the time, from Europe and America. And basically we were, it was like there were a lot of circus numbers. There was a full circus show already, right? They had their very traditional show. So our goal, what I had to do was kind of figure out how can we, because we couldn't rebuild an entire show, an hour and a half show in 2 weeks. That doesn't happen. So it was like, what do we take? What do we drop? What do we change? So it was like, okay, so I'd take, I'd look at one of the circus numbers. We'd kind of re-choreograph parts of it. We'd integrate some dancers or some b-boys into it. Be like, what if here, instead of you guys just continuing to do this, you stop, and then the b-boys come in, and then there's an interaction, and then how does that connect to the MC, to the poppers, to the, we had beatboxers in there doing beatboxing to replace the music that was, normally like recorded, kind of cheesy circus music. So basically my job was to kind of construct this new circus and figure out how to bring all the pieces together.
Cool. And you were a performer, right? So what is
I
was
also in the show.
Tell us about the coolest stunts you've done.
Coolest stunts. Well, so my main acrobatic act is called the sear wheel. So it's basically like a 6-foot metal hula hoop that I roll and flip and spin around inside of. So that's super fun. I got into that about 15 years ago, and I've it breaks into 5 pieces and fits in a massive heavy backpack. And I've traveled all over the world doing that. I think I've performed it in about 20 countries at this point. So that's my main acrobatic act that I do, and I did that also there. And I juggle fire on a 6-foot unicycle with a bunch of comedy with audience volunteers, and I have a number of different acts I do, but that's the main acrobatic one. But I ran a flying trapeze company in the Caribbean, and weird stuff like that.
So casual about it.
Well, this is the thing, is like when you're a circus artist, you end up just doing these weird. I think this is one of my favorite things about most of my best friends being circus artists, is that I have a game where when one of my friends says something where they start a sentence in a way that we don't notice is weird, like I'll be talking to somebody, be like, yeah, when I was studying Kung Fu at that Shaolin monastery, no electricity. And then I'll be like, all right, and so there's just these adventures you have where, that time when we did that Bollywood circus. But that's kind of the nature of the beast with circus, is that, one adventure leads to the next. And I think that's a lot of the excitement of it, is just that you're doing one thing, and suddenly you get a call from somebody I worked with. They're like, hey, we need somebody to run this flying trapeze program in the Caribbean. Can you come down and run this company? And I'm like, sure. And then, that leads to the next. And it's just kind of this ongoing thing where one adventure leads to meeting someone who invites you to the next adventure, and you kind of follow the thread.
All right. What I want to know, David, is what's the craziest stunt you've attempted?
Craziest stunt? That's a good question. I mean, I'm actually, so the prop that I do is actually, it's actually not dangerous. I mean, relative to other circus arts. It looks very dangerous. Like when people see it, because you're basically inside of a 6-foot metal hoop that's, about this wide, and you're spinning and flipping and rolling upside down. So it looks very, very dangerous. And
what's it called? The 6-foot?
It's called the sear wheel, C-Y-R. C-Y-R. No, not S-Y-I, C-Y-R.
C-Y-R.
Yeah. And then wheel. Yeah. So if you go there, you'll see it right there. Yep. So it looks like that.
Oh, and that was
that's, Yeah, so that's what I do. So you see, it looks really dangerous. You see that, and it's, it is dangerous. But I mean, I've jumped over roads and jumped off of cliffs on a snowboard, which is honestly like 10 times more dangerous than this. Like, so
Yeah, it looks more difficult than dangerous.
yeah, it is definitely difficult. I mean, it takes a lot of practice, but it's it's a really cool feeling. Like, it actually reminds me a lot of snowboarding. I mean, when the first time I saw somebody perform this act, I was just like, oh, this is incredible. I was like, I have to learn it, within 5 minutes. And then I ended up, basing my career for the next 15 years on it. It's super, super fun.
Could we find you doing this online?
Yeah,
somewhere?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You go to, what's the best way to do that? I could show you, what would be the easiest clip? If you go, let's see, can I type it? No, I can't type it for you, can I? Okay, you ready?
Yeah, sure.
You go boomcircus.com
Boom. Circus.
/ video - 2016.
I love how you memorized that. That is incredible.
Yeah,
You're
I had to do that. Hopefully I'm right. There we go. So
that's it.
this
All right,
is the
nice.
trailer for my last touring show. So I'm also a mask maker. I made all of these masks by hand.
Wow.
I studied in Italy, and this was our last touring show with my friend Peter. We toured around the world, for 4 or 5 years. And in this one, we actually played 6 characters, but it was just the 2 of us. So we each had 3 masks and costumes on stage, and we would actually change masks and costume in front of the audience on stage. So you would see us taking off a mask and putting on a new one and switching characters. And we put on a full hour-long circus theater show where we played all 6 characters ourselves, and we did live music for each other's numbers. So as you can see, Peter did slack rope, and he'd finale juggling clubs on a slack rope. Here you go. This is the wheel. That's me on the ukulele. And so just in a minute, you'll see more of a bit of the action with the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's me there. It's just long clips of it.
Spinning around.
Yeah, so this
is incredible. It looks like theater meets gymnastics is what it looks like.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, essentially it was a mask theater piece about a circus show. So there was, there was a full story and a full narrative with 6 characters, and it was very, very much. It was not a circus show as much as a theater show about circus, but.
So the story itself was literally about a circus show.
Yeah, it was essentially,
Okay.
it's kind of the classic mayhem, narrative where we have, 6 characters. It's a very, if you're familiar with Commedia dell'arte, the kind of traditional Italian mask theater, it was kind of a contemporary version of that in a way. So it was very inspired by, we studied, both Peter and I, in Italy. I worked with a famous Italian mask maker.
David,
yeah.
Please slow down here.
Too
much
Fair enough.
information in one time. All right, I'm looking at this mask here. What is this mask here? What am I looking at?
So these are they're made by hand, and they're either neoprene or paper mache. This one you're seeing here is paper mache. This is from our first season. And so I make it out of clay, and then I make a mold with plaster over the clay, and then paper mache or pour neoprene into that to create the mask. And then we build the characters from the masks, and then we build the show the characters build the show for us.
Wow. And what's it called? What's this kind of art called? With the mask,
traditionally, it's called Commedia dell'arte. It's the Italian traditional form from like 15 to 1700s that has kind of been revived in recent times in Italy. And this isn't strict Commedia dell'arte, but it's kind of a modern interpretation of that. It's kind of a contemporary rebirth of that art form.
Wow. All right. Cool. So you went from doing stuff in the circus, and then you were in LA, and then they flew you out to India, and it just seems you consider yourself like a lucky dude. You think?
Very, yeah. I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've had amazing experiences. I feel very lucky, and at the same time, there's kind of the dark side of the circus touring lifestyle that nobody wants to hear about, because it's I mean, dark, not like evil dark, but it's we'll be on tour with that show you just saw, and friends say, oh, how are you doing, what have you been up to? And I say, oh, we just performed at a castle in Germany, and then we flew to France, and then we were in the Czech Republic, and everybody goes, oh, you're living the dream, oh my god, I'm so jealous. And I feel very fortunate to have these experiences, but when you're living the dream, you're also carrying 130 pounds of gear on trains and all over countries, and missing flights, and not having enough money to eat good food, and you get out of rehearsal and nothing's open, and you're walking for hours. Like it's a very it's a very up and down lifestyle where you have these incredible experiences. It's totally magical, and it's also exhausting, and it can sometimes be very lonely and very fatiguing, you know. So it's a real it's a powerful life choice, and I feel very fortunate to have gotten to live it. But then 2 years ago, moved here to California, settled down, have a baby, and I am so happy to have a home. Thank you.
Congrats. Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Settle down. Yeah, true. From jumping in. What's like your best circus moment? And what's like your worst circus moment?
Oh, wow. My best circus moment, worst circus moment. You know, I think some of my best circus moments would be touring, you know, that show that you just saw. You know, when we had good shows with that show, it was magic. I mean, it was, you know, because I made the masks by hand. We created the whole script ourselves. You know, it was 100% us. It was a combination of improvisation and a scripted story. And so, you know, we had some shows like, you know, we had a show in France one night at a castle in France, you know, where we're literally out in front of this castle with like, you know, 2,000 people watching, doing our whole show 100% in French. And we just killed it, you know. And my partner, Peter, he doesn't speak French quite as well as me. So we had worked, you know, for months on the French, and we're like, is this going to work in French? Can we break into the French market? And, you know, the French are amazing. They're there with like the spotlights and the full tech team outside. And we just put on this show, and it was just like, it was just magic. You know, it was like, there was that sense of like, we were in a different place, the connection to the audience. They were just there with us on every time we took a breath, we could feel the audience breathing with us. You know, when it finished that night, we got back to hang out with the other artists, and we had people being like, was that you guys? We heard this applause like across the entire park from the other castle. And we're like, yeah, that was us. And so they're just, you know, those moments where it comes together and something that you created that came from your body, you know, your hands, your soul, that when that works and you see the people in the audience just looking up and they're just there and you're just fully connected. That's, for me, there's nothing better than that. There's no question about it. So that for me is awesome. Some of the worst moments might be the same show, you know, because we were touring outside, and so it wasn't street performing. We were like at outdoor art festivals in Europe, and we had a show in Ireland where, you know, the kids, there were like 300 kids in the front, and they were throwing dirt and rocks on our stage during the show. You know, and my partner was trying to get ready to do his rope number, and the kids are literally throwing rocks at him while he's in character. And we're trying to like get the parents to stop the kids from throwing rocks at us on stage while we're getting ready to do, literally, like, my partner could die, you know, in his number if it doesn't go well. And kids are like throwing rocks and dirt. So that was horrible. And you're in character on stage trying to do crowd control without ruining your show, and there's, you know, 300 kids in the front with no parents anywhere. And, you know, those moments were where it's like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I here? You know, like, one of my best friends in the world is about to die if I don't murder a small child. Like, you know, what do you do? And so there are definitely those times where you're just, you know, it's just rough, and you got to just power through and find the right way to do it. So,
wow, amazing. All right, I wanna, let's go to the good stuff. Let's talk about PK. All right, sure. How can we best see like a before and after of Aamir Khan? Is there?
I don't. Well, for that film, I don't have them here on this computer actually. You can see. I mean, if you just go like, if you know, do Aamir Khan for that, if you do before and after, you'll see another one of his movies where he did a transformation, which is what you're seeing there on the screen. But if you do, if you actually just go PK, if you go PK Aamir Khan shirtless, I bet that's, I mean, I don't know how you search these things, but I'm guessing, I'm guessing you'll see. Okay. So there you go. Okay, so that shot with the stereo, the one where he's holding the radio. So that's the training I did with him there.
Okay. And you said he was how old in here?
He's 47 years old. In this photo, he's 48 or 49.
Wow. I couldn't tell. I assume watching that he was like 30s or something. He's so jacked.
Well, he's got a real, he's got a real youthful face, and when his body gets good, he looks amazing. So, but yeah, he was I think 48 or 49 at the time that was shot.
Okay, and before you met him, was he like Was he active, or was he like he was in shape still? Like he wasn't. Mm-hmm.
He wasn't. You know, I mean, he had probably. I'd say we probably shredded off at least 10 or 15 pounds of fat and
Mm-hmm.
added probably 15 pounds of muscle. I mean, it was you know, so it was pretty radical. But it was also, you know, the reason he had hired me was because he wanted, you know, the day I met him, he said, you know, Dave, I don't just want to look like a circus artist. I want to feel like a circus artist, and I want to move like a circus artist. Like I want this character to be believable. So what was really, you know, the thing that most people don't know is that, you know, we lifted a lot of weights, but I also had him doing parkour and handstands and, you know, unicycles and juggling and, you know, full acrobatic training and cartwheel.
What?
Which
Unicycle training? You don't have that at your gym,
yeah.
Joseph. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, he learned how to ride a unicycle, the whole deal. But the physical stuff, you know, I trained him basically the way that we train in the circus. So it was a lot of weight training, but like none of my training is traditional. So, you know, it's a lot of stuff where it's uneven, off balance stuff that's kind of inspired by acrobatics or martial arts. So, you know, doing a lot of funky stuff, a lot of handstand push-ups, a lot of things in non-traditional positions where you're not just using a machine, you're supporting yourself on one hand while pulling cables or lifting weights. So
you didn't have to do that. That was because he wanted to feel like move like a circus artist.
Well, two things. I mean, one was to train him, you know, because it was like, okay, I can't turn you into a professional acrobat in a year and a half, but I felt like if I took him through the kind of training that an acrobat will do, it would help him really get into the role and understand both physically, mentally, emotionally, what does it mean to be an acrobat? Because it's really, training to be an acrobat is very different than just lifting weights, you know, and doing other things. And so that was really important. But also that's actually the way I train people in general when I do weightlifting. I'm really bored by traditional weightlifting. So my whole approach is based on really trying to make things fun and dynamic. So I do a lot of functional training. I do a lot of movement-based stuff, a lot of asymmetrical stuff, a lot of, you know, like I break a lot of traditional rules in the gym where they're like, oh, you know, you must not let your body move to one side or the other. And I'm like, you know, that's totally not true, because in life, you don't ever put something on a shelf by pushing it in a straight line with your feet in parallel. You put something on a shelf by reaching one shoulder higher than the other and going up on the toe of one foot. So I have created my entire training approach on both kind of an acrobatic way of like, how can this be fun and dynamic and movement? And also, what do we do in life? And so I always come back in my training to, how does this prepare you for life? Like right now, there's the firefighters here in Santa Cruz putting out the fires in our mountains. There's not a single moment ever where they're standing in parallel, pushing or pulling in parallel, right? So when I train someone in the gym, I want to say like, okay, if you were going to be a firefighter, what would you be doing? You'd be grabbing big, heavy things and moving them with one hand in front of the other, like you do in real life. So how can we replicate that in the way we train? And so I did that with Aamir, and that's also how I train clients and what I teach a lot on my channel.
It seems like you put a lot of focus on fine muscle as opposed to just strength training.
Definitely. And I'm a fan of alternating. Like we did do some just like straight up heavy lifting with Aamir. Like we would have periods where we say, okay, let's take 2 or 3 weeks and let's just, you know, do heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, you know, leg pressing, you know, 700 pounds. Like, so we did do traditional strength training for little bits, because I feel that it's, you know, everybody these days is like online, especially like, this is the best workout. And that's BS, because there is no best workout. The best workout is going to be dynamic and changing because your body is dynamic and changes. So we would do some moments of traditional stuff. But indeed, I'm really interested in how the stabilizing muscles work and how you can train muscle memory for actual movement, so that as you're building strength, you're also building awareness and ability to move. And that, you know, that comes from the circus, because in the circus, you can't go, you know, train everything in a straight line and then apply it to your number. Because, you know, if you're doing aerial arts, you need to be able to move your head and look around while pulling your body up. So if you train pull-ups in a straight line, that will help you get stronger and it'll develop strength that can be applied. But when I teach pull-ups, I'm like, you know, both myself and Aamir, like we do circular pull-ups, I do swinging pull-ups, I do pull-ups where you're actually spiraling, you know, your head and body to both sides as you're going up and down, where you're moving your shoulder blades, which everybody's like, you have to hold your shoulder blades together the whole time. And, you know, simple challenge, if you like pull-ups, try doing pull-ups where you do slow pull-ups, and the whole time you actually try to move your shoulder blades. So I'm really into breaking this idea that everything has to be stiff and contracted and held, and seeing how you can be kind of dynamic and aware while you're building strength.
Yeah, training with focus on building functional strength and
Yeah.
functional movement is something I feel like I really neglected when I first started lifting like 4 or 5 years ago. Actually,
Most
it's been
people
6 years now.
Okay.
And it wasn't until just at the beginning of this year that I started focusing on, building fine muscle,
Nice.
single leg work, single arm work,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to build stability as you're building strength. And it's been a
Exactly.
total change in pace to
Yeah.
just see how it feels like working on, single leg work and single arm work, and just seeing how like your balance and your like stability works. Like even walking feels totally different when you
Yeah.
start to
Yeah.
focus on that stuff.
Nah, it changes everything. And that's, that's often what I tell people when they're like, okay, what can I do to move more toward a different kind of training? And I say, okay, like there's a lot of complex stuff we can do. And, I have my channel for that purpose. I say, but if you want something easy, take any exercise you do with both legs or both arms and just do it with one, because it's going to force your whole body, like you're saying, to adapt to that asymmetrical challenge. It's going to force you to use the stabilizing muscles. Like if you're doing a leg press with one leg, all of the stabilizing muscles in your pelvis and knees are going to work like 800 times more than if you have both legs there. And so it's a real simple way to, I tell people just brush your teeth on one leg, like every day, forever. Just do that. Like change your life right there.
I mean, it really does. If you get people starting to focus on that stuff while they're young, in their 20s and 30s, you don't, I mean, I think everybody wants to be 70, 80-year-old grandparent that can, walk effortlessly and spend time with their kids or their grandkids. And that's something I didn't really ever think about before, is like, why focus on single leg or functional movement and stability. And now that's something I'm trying to like really incorporate throughout all of my strength training, so that you have that sort of long-term path.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's exactly what you said, because when you hear about the fall, that happens often to people in their 70s and 80s, where that one bad fall and they break their hip and they never fully recover. It is never because their muscles aren't strong enough. It's because their motor unit recruitment, the ability of different muscles to work together intelligently, isn't there. So it's like you can actually have, and you see this all the time. You see weightlifters often getting injured with simple things, because having muscles that can push or pull in a straight line is great. And I'm not trying to talk down on that. I'm a big fan of getting very strong. But if you don't have the ability to recruit the right muscle fibers at the right time to use them intelligently, then it's not functional. And right now there's a big push for like train like an athlete and, functional strength in the fitness community. And some of it's great, but a lot of it is, I think, kind of lip service, because you'll still see a lot of channels that are like, train like an athlete. And then all of their videos are like, how to make the inside of your pectoral muscle look bigger, how to make this muscle look bigger. And I'm like, look, if you want a muscle to look bigger, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not training like an athlete, because an athlete needs to, or an acrobat needs to move their body dynamically and be able to look and see and respond to what's happening around them while using their muscles. And that's I think my biggest complaint with gym culture is the like staring at my biceps in the mirror while I lift weights kind of thing. Which, like, I get it, when I lift weights and there's a mirror in front of me, I look too. But it's like, how can we get out of that space of like me, my muscles, how I look with that top lighting in the mirror, and look at what we do with our bodies. And again, I'm so inspired by the firefighters right now. I'm like, this is functional training, right? Like pulling people out of a burning house, moving a tree out of the way. And how do we train for life? How do we train to be heroes, essentially, to be able to help ourselves and other people? And that's what's exciting to me.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because when I first started lifting, I was just like, okay, I want to be healthy and I want to look good. So I just focused on bodybuilding and then doing, high intensity interval training and stretching.
Sure.
So like I had some of like the health and sort of functional movements in mind, but most of it was just focused on bodybuilding. And it was crazy just at the beginning of the year to start doing one real strength training for the first time in my life, as opposed to like keeping the same weights and just doing, bodybuilding for the past 5 years. And then two, just focusing on like the fine muscle and single leg movement. And it's been a total really interesting change. Just like feels like a 180 compared to what I used to be doing.
Nice. Yeah. And that's the thing, is I always tell people, like, you get comments of like, I'll have some exercises I post that look like they look not, you can see there's a balance challenge, but you go like, oh, that's not going to, work my muscles so much. And then I'm like, try it. Like, stupid exercise from a Austrian dance teacher I had, where you put your arms out and you open your hands as wide as you can and you squeeze them as tight as you can. And you do repetitions of this, but every single time actually squeezing and opening as big and small as you can. And if you do that 20 times in a row, like 15 seconds, your arms are on fire. And so I get like, bodybuilders to see that video and they're like, oh, what is this BS? And I'm like, dude, try it, 20 seconds. And then let's talk about
That's
it.
interesting because I've been doing stuff like that, but to work on like with my feet. So like spreading my
Nice.
toes as wide as I can, and then like pressing up on them, and just like working on like ankle mobility and just like keeping your legs functional, and like trying to improve just like how effortless does walking feel.
Yeah. Well, we don't use our feet as part, one of the main problems, like this is what connects us to the ground and where all of our movement starts. And, we put, we have our 2-year-old, barefoot or in, little shoes with little tiny like suede soles so she can feel the ground because, and I train barefoot, like at the gym, I lift weights, I'm lucky to have a gym here in Santa Cruz where it's one of the only ones where they let you lift weights barefoot because it's a rock climbing gym. And I lift weights, exclusively barefoot. And I spent 3 years at a dance conservatory in Austria, working with, some of the best ballet and contemporary dance teachers in the world and really focusing on the feet and how the muscles and how everything works in the foot. If you're like 22 bones or whatever in the foot, it's this like super dynamic part of your body. And most of us from early childhood, we just turn it into this mute zone that we don't feel and that we don't use. And so a lot of my training,
we're getting sold those shoes that are so stuffed with their heels. And that was something a trainer had recommended to me. And he was saying, switch to flat shoes.
Yeah.
Don't just work out like when you're, great that you're going barefoot on squats, deadlifts and everything for like big heavy lifts, but wear your flat shoes, walk around with flat shoes, stop wearing heavily insulated like soles, because from a young age, that's what's been kind of been our undoing. And this is what he was saying. He's like, 100%. He was saying like, I tell kids, that's what he was, the same thing. He's like, I tell parents, like, don't let your kids wear shoes. Have them walk around barefoot as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, and
I never thought about that.
Well, for people who might be listening who haven't felt this before, it's real simple. Like you can take your hand right now and just put your hand on the ground and push your fingers into the ground and you'll feel a response, right? Or even, the other hand, you push and you feel something moving. Then if you take your hand and you put it on your couch or your mattress and you push, your body doesn't move away. Instead, your fingers sink into it. And this is the same thing we do to our feet. We're trying so hard to like protect the body and, that we're actually taking away the body's ability to get information from the ground and to push and cause change internally. And so all of this amazing brain circuitry we have that's able to, like, what you said, these foot exercises, I'm a big fan of those also, like isolating fingers and toes. You can rewire your brain literally to have consciousness of the individual movements of your toes and the muscles of your feet, because we've lost that as a species, basically. And so I'm really excited about like, let's rebuild the neural wiring that allows us to feel and control parts of our body that we didn't even know existed, or we didn't know we were able to feel. Like it's just been this foot, and it's like, no, let's talk about what's in the foot. So yeah, it's
and what exciting. You're talking about with pressing your hands sort of into the ground, that's sort of the same thought process behind practicing like stretching out your toes, and then sort of what I've been doing is trying to relearn to walk and like making sure to press my feet and my toes into the ground as I'm walking, because when when you're wearing your flat shoes, you can't get away with that, what you were doing when you were walking in with a very, with a nice cushioned heel. And it's totally different.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. No, I teach a lot of foot workshops actually. And when I do, it's always kind of this revelatory moment, because most people have never used their feet. When they jump from their legs, and there's none of that action of the foot pushing through. And, again, I studied these amazing ballet teachers who could jump in the air and do, 3 full spins in the air and land perfectly in control and balance. And that comes from strong legs, obviously, but so much of it is that spring mechanism through the muscles and the bones of the foot on the way up and the way down. And man, when you get into that, it just changes your life. Your whole body transforms the minute you start to feel your hands and feel your feet.
Wow. Amazing. I want to move it on to what David was eating. Yeah, what Aamir was eating here. Yep. What's he?
Sure. So I actually have a video about that on my channel. Aamir Khan's fat loss diet for Doom 3. 5 meals a day most of the time. So we did 5 meals a day plus a protein shake was generally our food for Aamir, and it was pretty standard weightlifting fare. So nothing too complicated. It was basically complex carbs, lean protein, and a bit of healthy fat 5 times a day. So, everything was based around also his workout schedule. So, I'd often have him do weights first. So we'd, wake up and eat to prepare for the weights. So getting enough carbs and a bit of protein to prep for that. And then right after the weights, then he'd have a protein shake immediately and a bit of oatmeal with a banana. Then we take an hour break before cardio. A lot of people, obviously if you have a busy schedule and you have to go to the gym and do your cardio and weights, that's great. Like no problem. It's not the end of the world. But when possible, I always recommend, if you really want maximum gains, try to split up your weights and your cardio, because it's very taxing for your body to do a serious weightlifting session. And it's very taxing for your body to do a serious cardio session. And so you have to sacrifice generally one or the other. And one of the big things that I see a lot of guys do, especially men who want to get real ripped, is they'll run like a half an hour hard and then get a sip of water and lift weights, which again is good for you. I'm not saying it's bad, but the amount of your glycogen and your energy that you've depleted doing a half an hour of hard cardio right before lifting weights is going to make it that it's absolutely impossible to push as long and hard as you can in the weights. So my preference is, for most people looking to build size or strength, is first you start with the heavy weightlifting. Then if you have the time, either you have a little snack and wait like a good half hour, 45 minutes to just actually recharge your full body energy, or even do cardio later in the day. So we modeled our meals around that. So it's, breakfast, then protein shake and a little snack, which would give them enough energy for the running. Then after cardio, we'd have kind of a big meal with lots of carbs, protein again, some vegetables, and then kind of lighter meal in the afternoon, heavier dinner, lighter meal at night with, we often do some slow digesting protein at night before bed. So either casein protein, which is the kind of protein that's made, like protein shake powder is designed to be absorbed quickly into protein. And casein powder is what you take at night. Because it's designed to actually be broken down more slowly by the body. So it allows your body to have, to be basically releasing protein into your system throughout the night, so you can be rebuilding muscles at night. And cottage cheese, or in India, they do a lot of paneer, are kind of the more natural replacement for that. So I alternate between those two, and I would for Aamir also.
I see. Wow. And how long were you training for?
This is fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, and how long were you training? How long were you doing this for? Like, how long did it take from you got to the movie shooting?
This was kind of the typical Indian experience where, I was told like, okay, so we have, we're going to be here for 8 months. Like, it's an 8-month contract. And I'm like, great. And then the week before I show up, they're like, hey, we had a delay. It's going to be 10 months. Is that okay? And I was like, sure. And then I show up, and a few months in, they're like, oh, we had another delay. It's going to be 12 months. And I think I had like 7 contract extensions. And I ended up staying almost 2 full years.
What? From 8 months to 2 years. That's amazing. That's good for him, right? Because his body was able to adapt over that time.
Yeah. And it was good and challenging. I mean, it also meant that, because we had him ready to film after like 6 months. And then it was another year really.
And then after that point, so what does he do after that 1 year? Right? Yeah.
So we kept training. I think, the challenge for him is that Aamir likes to eat ice cream and food like that. Like he's, everybody in India, they call him Mr. Perfectionist. And he is, he's the most insanely dedicated hard worker I've ever met. Like, so no question about it, but he does like his ice cream. So the challenge for us was like, being like, I'm going to do this no matter what for 8 months is one thing, but like 2 years of being that dedicated to your diet and your workout. I mean, like the day that I met Aamir the first time, he explained the project and what was happening. And I was not eager. I wasn't into Bollywood. I had just gotten taken to the finals in Vegas for America's Got Talent with a beatboxer. So we had, made it through 3 rounds, and we had killed it with the judges. So we were about to go on America's Got Talent. I was building a new show. But suddenly I'm in India and I get this offer, and I'm like, oh man, how can I turn down training like Bollywood's biggest movie star for a circus movie? Like I have to do this. What an adventure. But I was like, but I'm not into it for the fame. Like, I don't care about movie stars. I don't care about, that kind of thing. I was excited about the project, like turn a 47-year-old out of shape actor into a professional acrobat. Like, that's something I can get excited about. But I told him the first day, I was like, so Aamir, I just want to tell you, like, I respect what you do, but I need you to know I'm not your fan. And if you miss one workout ever, you fly me home the next day. And I just want you to know, like, I'm not interested in training a movie star who's a movie star. I'm interested in training someone who wants to do this. And so I'm telling you right now, like, if you miss one workout ever, I quit that day. And it's not a joke and it's not a threat. I will literally fly home the next day, and you will pay for my flight, and we're done. Because I didn't want to get into, like, I didn't want to give up everything I had to give up to go train somebody who's going to be like, I'm a movie star. I like to have my trainer around. I was like, no, if we're doing this, we're doing it,
Wow. Wow.
And
This was for PK? What movie was this?
well, so originally he hired me for Doom 3, but there was overlap in the shooting. So we ended up doing slightly different sculpting of his body for the two films. But it was essentially one training process that ended up being used for both of them just because of the shooting schedule. So he originally hired me for Doom 3, but I was also his trainer while he was shooting all the shirt off scenes for PK.
I see. All right.
And, you know, to his credit, for 2 years, he missed 2 workouts in 2 years. And, you know, one
You
was
didn't
the day
quit?
his son
You didn't bail out on him the second he dropped?
I almost did. You know, actually, that's a good story. One day he goes, so Dave, you know, tomorrow we're not working out. And I was, you know, we're like maybe 8 months in or something. And I'm like, Aamir, we talked about this. Like, you miss a workout, I'm done. Like, and he's like, no, Dave, no, trust me. It's a good reason. And I was like, no, man, no, I'm not even listening. There is no good reason. He's like, look, I'll make you a bet. Because Aamir loves to gamble and I love to gamble. We play poker together. So he's like, I'll make you a bet. Tomorrow, I'm not working out. Day after, you come over. If you think that this was not a good reason to miss a workout, I will treat you to dinner at any restaurant in Mumbai. You say it, we will shut down the dining room. We will take a whole dining room and we will have it just for me and you have any dinner you want at any restaurant in India. He said, but if I'm right and you think it was a good excuse, you take me to dinner at your favorite restaurant and you treat me to dinner. And I said, okay, that's fair. And I come over, you know, day after and we're having some tea and I'm like kind of waiting to see what's up. And suddenly goes, I'll be right back. And he walks down the hall and he comes back and he's holding his baby in his arms. And they had done a surrogate birth because, you know, his wife wasn't able to carry the child. So it was their biological child, but they'd had a mother who carried the child and gave birth. But nobody was allowed to know about it because it was a big secret. Just because of his level of fame, there was a lot of danger of what could happen to the woman or et cetera. So nobody, I mean, there were like 4 people alive on earth who knew they were about to have a baby. And I was, you know, not one of those 4 people. That was one of the first, you know, people to find out. I come over and he walks out with their, you know, 2-day-old baby in his arms. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm taking you out to dinner. Like, you know, what do you say? So we, you know, called my favorite restaurant and I was like, can I please rent your restaurant for a night? Because you can't have Aamir have dinner where there's people because it's like insane mobs. It's just, it's physically impossible to have him in a room with people. Otherwise it's just insanity. Like, you know, people get stampeded and go to the hospital when he shows up in town. They bring in police force from other, you know, cities because it's so, you know, just so intense. Like what happens when he walks, like, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio rides his bike around LA and you go like, oh, I saw Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, movie stars in America go shopping. Like, Aamir can't go shopping. Like, he hasn't walked into the street without a team of bodyguards forming a human circle around him for 25 years because people die if he goes outside and there's not enough preparation for him to be in public, because literally people will trample over their own children and people die because they want to get close to him and touch him. You know, it's like it's a level of fame we don't have here. It's very hard to describe to Americans.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's really, actually we can. It's simple. It's Elvis. Like, it's like Elvis or the Beatles. It's like people passing out, you know, people who like, it's, you know, it's just a whole different level of fame.
But that's kind of humble of him that he was able to work for like 2 years, like work out.
Oh,
right?
he's actually a really, he's insanely famous, but he's super down to earth. He's really chill. He's a really smart guy. He's very sweet. I mean, he was always, you know, treated me really well. Like, he was, you know, you show up, he's got a t-shirt with a hole on it that he was wearing yesterday. He kicks his feet up on the table. You know, he's asking you how you're doing and what's going on. I mean, he's very generous, humble guy. Like, he doesn't let it get to his head. He just lives in this universe where, you know, this is his reality is like an armed police officer and at least 6 bodyguards for him to walk outside of his door.
Well, David, I have to say these stories are amazing, but we're out of time here. Well, we could talk on for more and more and more, but it's just that I have so many questions, but that's it. That's what happens.
I got it. Okay.
Joseph, is there anything you want to ask? Anything you want to say before wrap up?
No, I guess one final question was, it's interesting what he said about doing cardio and lifting separately, because for years I always found that doing cardio first really primed me for like a better lift. Like, I felt like I got a better pump. You know, I was more excited. Like, I felt like I had more energy to get through the workout. So now you're making me consider, you know, keeping those separate.
Well, 2 things. One, it's not black and white, right? So there is, like, I often would do like a 10 or 15 minute cardio session before, it's tricky because people are always talking about like high intensity interval training right now. People say like, how much should you do, or should you do it before? Most people, when they say they're doing high intensity interval training, according to like the scientific definition of what we mean by that, they're actually not. They're running fast and it feels intense, but they're not actually sprinting. They're not sprinting like someone's got a gun to their head, which is really where you get the metabolic changes that are going to happen in your body through kind of like the studies where you're studying HIIT training and the effects. It's actually a level of intensity that most people are not doing at the gym when they're doing HIIT, which doesn't mean it's not good for you. It's great for you. It's just a different level of what it does to your body. And it's also how much you do. So doing like a bit of cardio, either, a longer cardio session that's a bit more chill or a shorter one that's intense, can prime you. But when you go past a certain point, then you're just, it's physically impossible to not have depleted a certain amount of energy from your body. Your glycogen stores are going to go down. Your energy is going to go down. You're going to be running low on glucose unless you refuel. So it's again, there's never, for me, I think that's the danger of the online world right now, is the way people sell videos is, if you look on YouTube for fitness, never do this exercise again. Like it's all about trying to scare you into thinking you're wrong. So I'm not one of those guys. I'm not like, if you're doing cardio first, you're stupid and you're messing it up. And everybody's body is different and everybody's personality is different. And that's the thing I keep telling people is, my motto is the best workout is the one you do. So figure out what you enjoy, pay attention to how your body adapts, take notes so you actually track what's happening and you're not just kind of guessing, and then adapt based on what works for you and what you enjoy. Because ultimately, nothing I say scientifically matters if you don't have fun and want to go back tomorrow because it's fun. So I'm always like, turn on your favorite song and dance in your living room if that's what you're going to do 7 days a week for the rest of your life, instead of going to the gym for 2 months and quitting and then complaining about being fat while you watch more TV. So, just find what you love and go with it. So
amazing. David, once again, much honor to have you on the show. You can check out David's YouTube channel. We'll link it at the bottom. He talks about fitness and training and all that stuff. And David, is there anything you want to say?
No, it's a real pleasure to get a chance to chat with you guys. I appreciate the time. And, to anybody, I guess the one thing I would say to anybody listening, same thing I say on my channel, is right now, not after you watch something after this podcast, right now, stop and do one set of anything. Right now, do one set of push-ups. Right now, do one set of squats. Do it, and then whatever you guys have here, put a comment below this episode and tell these guys and me what you did. Not after watching something else, not after looking up on YouTube to figure out what to do. Do anything right now for the next 60 seconds when these guys press end on this interview. That's what I want to say.
Awesome.
Just do something with your body.
All right. Do something with your body. Like, subscribe, share this video, all that stuff. And another day in other episodes.